Hello everyone, today I will be sharing some of my grace theories. Please remember these aren't confirmed, and these are just theories. Without further ado, let's begin. So my first theory is regarding Zen and Reprieve, the new game modes. More specifically, what they are. We can look to their respective documents for this. So Zen is a little more complicated to understand, so we'll get to that in a second. Let's take a look at Reprieve. This is Reprieve's document. In the document, it says, deep within the fumes of sin, evaluation, regret, thirst, war, and return. So a theory I have is that Reprieve is a place of sin that the player is in. Evaluation in this context doesn't quite have a clear explanation, but it could mean that the player is evaluating what entity to add into Reprieve, but I don't really know. Regret could be that the player sinned, and regrets doing so. Thirst could be seen as the player's thirst for more XP/bricks. War is pretty clear-cut in my opinion. As far as I'm aware, it references to the war between the player and the entities. Return also seems clear-cut in my opinion. It might mean that when the player ends a Reprieve run, they return to God. Another thing in Reprieve that supports the idea of returning to God is when, presumably, God grabs the player's hand, representing a return to grace. Now on to Zen. Zen's document doesn't have much information about it, so I won't even bother bringing it up. Zen is a peaceful version of grace, with no hazards, no doors, and it has a purple tint. Now immediately, we assume this place is safe, until it's not. Eventually, a rot/crack appears. When touched, it summons sin, something impersonating God. Many think that the rot is something that overwhelms you with sin, and it might be that way, but I beg to differ. My theory is that the player in Zen never tried to reform to God, or anything of the sort, and was enticed by sin. And just like the nature of sin, it deceived the player into thinking they are safe, but they're not. Perhaps the rot is something that brings the player closer to God, and sin doesn't like this, and overwhelms the player with their own sins and guilt. All speculation on this end, though. Now that we have Zen and Reprieve out of the way, let's talk about the normal grace. And has the lore changed? Well, not really. It's still the same, with the player having sinned, trying to reform to God, and God putting them in the maze, also known as the path. Along with this, their sins were turned into entities that they must face to survive and reach grace. So you might ask, what else is there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you one final theory. You might have noticed I said the player in Zen didn't reform to God, and the player in Grace tried to reform to God. And that seems contradictory, but I present my final theory of the video. My theory is there are three different sinners. Think about it, in Reprieve, the situation of the sinner is different from the sinner in Grace. In Reprieve, they are fighting their sins, whereas the sinner in Grace is following God's path. Zen's sinner is presumably not on God's path, as there is no yellow paint on the wall, telling them where to go. All of this combined makes me believe that the sinner in Grace, the sinner in Reprieve, and the sinner in Zen are all different people in the lore. That is it for my theory video. I really liked making this video, as I had these theories about the game while I was playing, and wanted to put it in a video. Thank you guys for your support. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you guys enjoy my next videos. Bye.